Hello, television family. Thank you for connecting with us each Sunday morning to get a word from the Lord tailor-made for you. We here at Mount Zion want you to know that we appreciate you so much. Your loyalty, tuning in Sunday after Sunday, again to get a word tailor-made for you. Today, as we prepare to enter into the word, I want you to do three things for us that will make this connection more meaningful for you as well as more meaningful for us. Number one, pray that God will give you a word, speak to you about your own life, your own situation. Number two, help us to reach more people by pausing now and picking up the phone and calling someone, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, even an enemy, and inviting them to watch this program as well. And then thirdly, we're going to asking you, pleading with you to partner with us financially to expand our capacity to reach the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ and the compassion of Jesus Christ. We've got to have deeds to follow our words. How do you become a partner? If you would consider partnering with us by giving $30 per month to Mount Zion Baptist Church, and we in turn take that and put it back into this television ministry, but also to spread the word again through deeds. You will see instructions on your screen on how to give, and you can just follow those. And let's pray now together as we go into the word. I'm asking you to pray for us, and we are praying for you. Come on, let's hear what God has to say this morning. But there's a word from the Lord in the book of Numbers, chapter 13, and I solicit your prayers. And I want to read verses 30 through 33 in your hearing, and I'll be in all of chapter 13 and 14. Verse 30, King James Version, and Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search, it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. All the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. Listen, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. The reading of the word. And from those verses, I want to preach from the subject today, can you still believe? Can you still believe? As we've been celebrating Black History Month, my mind has been wondering, when we talk about and celebrate all of the success of the past, and even today as we looked at contemporary celebrations of a young lady who blessed us being a part of the development, the discovery of that vaccine that helped us to survive COVID. And all around us, we can see progress and success. But at the same time, in our community, what we hear and what we see among too many of our people is an attitude of defeat. It's an attitude of defeat in that you hear us saying things like this. Well, I would start the business. I would do that, but you know, they keep us down. I would try to do this, but you know, the banks won't loan us money. And it is true. It broke my heart to see a story on Navy Federal the other day of how they discriminate in mortgage loans to African Americans. to see that the approval rate for African Americans is 48%, and for non-African Americans is 77%. And the numbers are not what bother me so much, but as a part of that news story on CNN, I don't just, read what I see on IG and Facebook, because it'd be fake news, But they interviewed a young man in Dallas, Texas, young African-American man who was in business, who had the credit score, who had the credit history, who had $100,000, more than 20% to put down on the house, and everything that they needed, had actually given him a pre-approval credit or report and said, you can go get the house. But then when he found the house, they sent him another letter, said, we're sorry, upon further checking, you're not qualified. And then 2 weeks later, he was closing because another bank with the same stuff gave him a loan. And so discrimination is real, not saying it's not, but because it's there in every arena, it doesn't have to defeat us. And not only do we say that, but when you look at data about progress, things like the wealth gap, things like academic achievement gaps, things like poverty, things like justice and equality and criminal behavior, you just name it, in data that matters for progress, we seem to lag behind. And part of that comes from a mindset that says we can't do. And a mindset, and I hadn't figured this out yet, that causes us in general to be attracted to the negative and not the positive. To have positive models among us, but ignore them and go after the negative. She usually sits there, oh, there she is right there. And so sitting in front of me is Dr. Thelma Chun, the principal over there at that Robert Cross Elementary School. And they are always excelling, always exceeding and getting national recognition. But I got to ask you, anybody from the community come out and just give you applause and they want your reports and they ignore that, but let you fail. Dr. Shoemate over there, same thing in her school. Angie Gardner back there, the 4C Academy of the Year in all the state of Georgia, and over at Lincoln, exceed the milestone. They got, and there are other schools, I'm just looking at these principals here, all these excellent things going on, and nobody's showing up bringing you flowers. Nobody's showing up bringing you congratulations. But mess around and do something wrong, then everybody want to do something. And if you want to know how to succeed, study somebody that's already succeeded. And you got them all around you. And so the danger in that is you start breeding that kind of foolishness in other generations. And so you have a generation of people who repeat the same thing. We're not as good, we cannot excel, and even make people afraid to excel because somebody come after you. And I'm shooting with the wide shotgun now, but I'm going to bring it in a minute. And so you have people who don't believe that they can because the defeat has already happened in their mind. And then on a personal level, I want you to see that there are a lot of things that God has called you to, that God want to bless you with, that you've not been able to achieve. It's not because of anybody outside of you, any opposition, any hurdles. It's all because you've not done what you needed to do within yourself to achieve it. The barrier is not the other folk, it's not the system. It could be you. And it could be that your belief system is what's getting in the way. Again, not denying that there are problems, but I'm saying to you in case you go to sleep, in spite of the problems, we can still do it. The question is, can you still believe it? This 13th chapter, 14 chapters, is one of my favorite in the Bibles because it speaks to the potential in people who believe in God in spite of. Listen, God has made a promise through Abraham to the children of Israel that he would give them a land. That's why it's called the land of promise. He delivers the children of Israel out of bondage, slavery in Egypt after 400 years. Sounds familiar. And says to them, I'm getting ready now to take you into the promised land. And depending upon which commentator you believe, it didn't take them 30 days. Some say 2 weeks, some say a month, but nevertheless, a short period of time, they made it from the borders of Egypt to the borders of the promised land. And then God says to them, Moses, you're the leader, send 12 spies to go over in the land and search it out. Because God had described the land to them, but God wanted them to get a glimpse of it. He wanted to have them a vision of what the land was like. And so Moses gave them careful instructions. Tell me, is the land fertile? It's all in chapter 13. Tell me about the crops over there. Tell me about the people. Tell me about the cities. Are they walled up? Are they not walled up? Tell me about the geography. Tell me about the sociology. Tell me about the economics. Go in and do an assessment and bring me word back. And he just didn't choose anybody, but he chose 12 leaders, a leader from each tribe. And so 12 men go over. And then when they come back, he asked for a report. And 2 of the men, Caleb and Joshua, give a favorable report. Oh, it's everything God said it is. It's flowing with milk and honey. Look, we brought some grapes back. We've never seen a cluster of grapes this big. In fact, we had to get a stick, tie the cluster of grapes on the stick, put them on our shoulder, because you couldn't carry these grapes in your hand. They're so big. The cities are masterfully built. That they got walls around them, and it's just wonderful. And the people over there, they are giants. Oh, but that other crowd. 10 say, yeah, it's all that, flowing milk and honey, walled cities. But those folk over there are giants. We can't take that land. They defeated already because they have decided that they can't take the land. And then they said, and again now Joshua, Caleb, and the 10 saw the same thing, and we saw giants over there. And check this out now, they went as spies. They didn't talk to anybody. They were just spying. And then they make this statement. We saw the giants, and in their eyes, we are like grasshoppers. And even in our own eyes, compared to them, we are nothing but grasshoppers. They have projected onto themselves a grasshopper mentality. They have made the giants bigger than they are. They're too big for us to fight. We cannot win. We cannot take the land. We were in slavery in Egypt, and now we've come out here and we're at a dead end because the people and the city is too much for us. How can 12 men go, 2 see victory, and 10 see defeat? Here is how it happened, and I need you to listen to me, because their perception became their truth. Your perception is your truth. So you got to always be aware of your perception. The real truth is the giants were not that big. The real truth, they could defeat them. But because of their perception, because of their understanding, because of the power they ascribe to the giants, and the lack of power, the weakness they ascribe to themselves, they became so fearful that they could not proceed to win, to occupy the land that God had given to them. Maybe you missed it, so let me say it another way. Some of you have perceptions. Well, now let me back up. All of us have perceptions about our environment and even about ourselves. And could it be that your perception of what's out there that's created the fear in you is what's holding you back. And the reality is, it's just your perception, because it is not as deadly or as bad as you think. And those two with the other perception, theirs is totally different. And so they're ready to fight. And I'm talking about in your personal life, professional life, as a community, as black people, white people, brown people. Could it be that your perception of what's out there is holding you back? Let me illustrate it to you, and then I'm going to give you these 3 points and be through. If Jacob was my promised land, and there were snakes between me and Jacob, guess what? I wouldn't make it. Because I'm not afraid of many things. But I'm going to go ahead and be truthful. I'm scared of snakes. And they tell me that there's some snakes that are not venomous, some snakes won't bite. You know how that is. But it's a snake. And some of you would call me a coward. And I have one person who knows this about me, and he calls me a coward. Hyson, would you put my picture up, please? That is my grandson. That is a ball python wrapped around him. He loves snakes. He has no fear of snakes. And he says, Papa, don't worry, that snake is not venomous. He's a constrictor. I said, well, Daniel, what is a constrictor? That means he wraps around you and chokes the life out you. Daniel, I said, you got him on your head, you got him on your neck. You see, he is as happy as he can be, and I am as far away as I can be, because I am scared of that. And you know what part of this experience, every chance he gets, he wants his mama, he wants us to take him where he can hang out with snakes. And that particular snake and that experience is about trying to convince his mama to get him a snake for Christmas. Papa, please tell mama I want a ball python for Christmas, and I'm gonna take care of him. And when he was home, I mean, he did research, he know what the snake eat, and yada yada yada. I'm gonna say, Daniel, you know I'm in the corner, but I'm not gonna be able to advocate for you on that. That's between you and your mama. And the point I make is perception. My perception and Daniel's perception about snakes are totally different. And if his promised land is Jacob and the snake is in the way, Daniel gonna go pet the snake and then go to Jacob. And the only difference is the snake is the same. It's our perception. And I'm asking you, what is your perception about the outside world and the things that you think are holding you back, that are holding your children back, that's personal, that's in your way? What is it that you fear? Because I'm going to need you to be clear in your mind about that as I finish this sermon. What is it that you're afraid of? What is it you think that's holding you back? What is it? And so what I want to say to you in this passage today, I'm going to give you something to help you. You ready? If you want to overcome whatever it is in front of you, you just got to know the answer to this question. Can you still believe God? No matter what the field, no matter what's going on, can you still believe God? And here's where you start. Look at verse 2 in chapter 13. Verse 2, chapter 13. It says, send thou men that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Every tribe of their fathers shall send a man, every one a ruler among them. Now look again, I want to show you something. Send thou men that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. You got to have clarity around the promise of God. And that's what Caleb and Joshua said. These men are worried about their ability to fight, to win, to overcome whatever challenge the people in the land will bring. They are afraid of the walled cities because strategically the walled cities are for the protection, and they have nothing to enable them to overcome the walls. They have no artillery, they have no guns, no cannons, and they will be defeated because the wall is there, and that's what it's there for. And so they're looking at it. The circumstances, they're looking at it strategically as soldiers and how to fight. And for them, they say we can't win. But the promise was never based on their capacity to fight, win, or overcome a wall. God said, I will give it to you. And when God makes a promise, no matter what it looks like, the question is, can you believe God's promise? If God promised you He's going to give you the land and you get there, some giants over there, can you still believe? But come close to me. You got to be clear about the promise. Now, don't start trying to do business, stand on business, based on a promise that didn't come from God. But when you know that you know what God has said, then you can be clear. You got to be clear. So Pastor Simmons, how do I know God's promise? Well, first of all, there's some promises in the book. The Bible is the promise book. If God has made you a promise in the book, then you ought to be able to stand on it. Can I broaden your perspective about your prosperity? You may have a vision to become wealthy, but a better vision is to let God define what your prosperity look like. Here's a promise from God to his people. I will make you the lender and not the borrower. Now, if God promised that, why am I going to let anything in this world, any system in this world designed to discriminate me, make me believe I can never be the lender and will always be the borrower? I'm clear on that. I will never, ever be in bondage. I have been now, because I was ignorant and didn't understand. But I'll never be in bondage to somebody else through debt. This church will never be in bondage because God has said we're the lender and not the borrower. And I want you to know today as a church, you are loaning money to Fortune 500 companies. Apple works because Apple borrowed money from Mount Zion. Elon Musk is doing what he do in part because he has money from Mount Zion and some other folk in here. Pastor, what you talking about? Because we own stock. We own bonds. We are lending and not borrowing. He says, I'm going to be the head and not the tail. I refuse as a person, as a people, to be content to be at the bottom of every negative statistic. Baby, we will be the head and not the tail. I expect my children to be the head and not the tail, my grandchildren. And because we expect that, we know that faith without works is dead. And so I make sure they get homework. Whether the school give it to them or not, make sure they have experiences and exposures that's going to prepare them for the world that they live in to compete with anybody in the world. Because God has made a promise, and so I'm trying to say to you, what are you giving your children? What are you preparing them for? Defeat or victory? You clear about the promise, so you need to get in the book. Let me tell you something. Some of y'all worried about some peoples. You got a promise in Psalm 37, fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious of the workers of iniquity. I'm clear about that. And so you get it from the word, and then God reveals stuff to you. And when God reveals stuff to you, God still speaks to his people. And then when you're clear about what God has said to you, you got to then move to do these next two things, actually three things. So once you're clear about it, here it is. Caleb and Joshua, if you want to hang on to your belief, here's what you got to do. Clear about what it is God has promised. You got to have the courage to stand up for the promise when others are not speaking favorably about the promise. Stand up for the promise when others are not speaking favorably about the promise. What do you mean? Those 10 spies got in the meeting, and start talking negatively about their ability to go in. And really, it wasn't about Moses' ability or Caleb and Joshua. It's really against God. It's God who made the promise. And they are fighting against God's promise. But Caleb and Joshua had the courage to stand up for the promise against those who were speaking unfavorably. Can I tell y'all one problem that I found with church people? In my 55 years of knowing about church life, I have been pastoring 55 years, but my dad is a preacher. And so at the age of about 14, which would have been 55 years ago, I started paying attention to church. And in my pastorate, I paid attention to church. And this is what I have discovered, that a lot of church folk don't have courage to stand up for what they know is right and or God has said. They will get in the meeting, and then folk who don't speak favorably will start attacking and spewing out mistruths. And the others will sit there quietly and not speak up. But then they'll call you and text you after the meeting and want to speak up. And so those of us in leadership, we're just gracious, but we don't need your texts and calls of affirmation after the meeting. Speak, open your mouth in the meeting. Rebuttal the foolishness that's coming out of the 10's mouth. I know y'all can't say amen right there. That man right over there, he can attest to this. We know a preacher who was killed, who was shot by a deacon in the church. And members knew what he was planning to do, but I don't want to get in the middle of nothing. Well, he said it, but I just didn't believe it. Killed the man. I just didn't think he was going to go that far. If you had said something in the meeting to stand up for what was right, the man might be alive now. Because once it come out, you don't know how far it's going. But to be quiet is cowardice. And I'm telling you, don't invite me to a meeting if you want somebody to hush. Because I'm standing up. If I know what God has said and I know what is right, I'm standing on the promise. Hear me now. They all saw the same thing. And from a military standpoint, strategically, it didn't look favorable. But what Joshua and Caleb did is they stood up, they stilled the crowd, and they spoke.